as one of America's fastest growing companies by Inc. 5000. Hayden Outdoors is the brand that sells the land.
Every growing season brings challenges. 2020 took things to a whole new level. Do what needs to be done. Work with the trusted experts at Nutrient Ag Solutions. From weed and disease control to advanced nutrients, Nutrient Ag Solutions has the products to help maintain plant health throughout the growing season. Loveland products, as well as trusted partners, including BASF and Syngenta, can take your plant health program to the next level. For healthy and profitable results, talk to your local crop consultant or visit nutrientagsolutions.com.
Doug Bradley Trucking is a proud supporter of Kansas farmers and ranchers. Interested in a driving career? Doug Bradley Trucking proudly provides driver training programs. And when you drive for Doug, you're home with your family every weekend. Visit DougBradleyTrucking.com to find out more.
Hauser Custom Ag, a commercial spraying business serving central Kansas farmers for over 12 years, has partnered with Post Rock Aviation to offer aerial applications. Any crop, any season, whether by ground or by air, contact Hauser Custom Ag for all your chemical and fertilizer needs.
Back to the country. Sounds good. 193.7.
Good morning. I call to order the June 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Saline County Board of Commissioners. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Shadwick?
Here.
Commissioner Sparks?
Here.
Commissioner Vidrickson?
Here.
Commissioner Weiss?
Here.
Commissioner White?
I ask that you please stand and join me in a flag salute followed by a moment of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone that today's meeting, as the past several have been, will be a combination virtual meeting. If you wish to participate in today's meeting, you will need to dial 785-621-0800, followed by the participant code of 782956, followed by the pound sign. If you wish to speak during our meeting, you would then need to dial *9. At this point in time, we will move to our citizens' input, where citizens may speak on county government, usually limited to 3 minutes, and pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda. Does anyone wish to speak?
Where's the podium?
Norman Mantle, Salina, Kansas. On this issue of social distancing, we're not complying with that. And to do that, we're going to have to reduce the population. Other issues I got here, why is the taxpayers paying for county employees' driver's license? Why don't they get the driver's license requirements and then apply for the job? I don't know anybody that goes pheasant hunting that can do it without getting his license first. The subject has been brought up about removing the tax lid. If you remove the tax lid, that means higher taxes. President George Bush said, "Read my lips. No new taxes." The people that want these items, let them pay for it, because they're the one that's benefiting from it. They want it, let them pay for it. So we're going to raise your taxes. If you want an item, let them make a grant. You like grants. And last but not least, a free people ought to not only be armed, but they shall have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain the status of independence for many who might attempt to abuse them, which includes their own government. George Washington made that statement. So if you start abusing the people, I can see a revolution coming. I'm not advocating it, but I ain't going to stand in the road.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Hannah, does anyone else wish to speak? Anybody on the line?
Mr. Chairman, no one on the phone has raised their hand.
All right, we will move on to our regular business, the consent agenda, which we will be removing the prior minutes as presented. We'll remove those for today, which would leave approval of tax roll adjustments, approval of accounts payable and payroll, and approval of public forum agenda. Would someone like to make that amended motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda with one exception, and that's removing the minutes as stated.
Second the motion.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move on to item number 1, which is RFA 170-20, Saline County reopening phase 3 with Jason Tiller, our Health Department Director. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is kind of a COVID update rolled up into this RFA as well, which part of this update will lead into the narrative part of the request for action. If the, there we go. So just as a review, and you can see kind of where we were, this is about a month ago to where we are now with the picture in Kansas with the total numbers tested. At this point, Kansas has tested over 103,000, 93,000 negatives, 10,000 plus positives, a 9.7% positive rate. And so that's a number, the percentage that we want to continue to see go down. The lab testing rate of 35.40 per 1,000, which is a number we want to see continue to go up. And then hospitalizations, 862, and deaths in the state, 217. In Saline County, up to date, we have tested 1,044. We've had 1,020 negatives, 29 positives, a percent positive of 2.7%, a lab testing rate of 19.25 per 1,000, which those numbers are going in the directions that we want them to. We've had a total of 8 hospitalizations since our first case at the end of March, and only 2 deaths. So this next couple of graphs just kind of shows you the distribution of the case counts over time since we started and had our first case on the 29th of March. And you can see that it kind of started to spread out where we would have a case every 2 to 3 days. The majority of the cases were in April. And then in May, we only had 4 cases total in May. And so that line is pretty well significantly flattened out. And at present, we're only still monitoring, I believe, 2 right now. So everybody else, other than those, of course, who have passed away from it, have recovered. So as far as the timeline, on April 27th, we started using the turtle graphic that Hannah put together to just start reminding people and letting them know and getting them to thinking about that this will be a slow process, and this was before the governor's ad astra plan was released, but that people understood that reopening was not going to be a snap your fingers and then everything would be automatically back to normal, but it would be a slow process so that we could continue to monitor cases and be ready for anything that did happen. On the 22nd, of course, she moved Kansas itself to phase 2 of the ad astra plan. And then on the 26th, she removed returned all the authority to counties to handle their response and then make those decisions. Now, in order to continue some continuity while we convened our advisory council and and had conversations about what we should do and make some evidence-based decisions. On the 26th, as the health officer, issued an order which simply kept us at the same phase 2 level to give us time to be able to come up with the plan of what we needed to do next without causing confusion in the public. So on the 27th, I met with the advisory council. And then on the 28th, myself and the emergency manager, as well as county leadership, Phil, Hannah, City of Salina leadership, representatives from the hospital, healthcare, agriculture, Chamber of Commerce, local businesses, and other local nonprofits all met on the 28th. And from those 2 meetings, the general consensus was that we still need to continue a phased reopening process and set a mass gathering limit for 50 in phase 3 and using data for driving our decisions. And so it's not just one set of data, it's looking at the overall picture. So case numbers, numbers of deaths, hospital resource use. And then also, since our hospital is a regional hospital, taking that into consideration too, because they do get a lot of critical ICU patients from other smaller hospitals. So that does affect the hospital resources here locally. So we landed on June 5th to open in phase 3 as somewhat of a compromise. So by the governor's ad astra plan, Phase 3 wouldn't start until June 8th. We moved it up a little bit to give the few businesses that were still unable to open an opportunity to be able to open a weekend early rather than waiting till Monday. But additionally, we felt that by the 5th, we would know and have a good indication of whether there were any upticks and outbreaks or cases or anything like that based off of anything that may have happened over Memorial Day weekend. We also recognize that it's unrealistic to sit here and expect that we're going to try and watch what happens 2 weeks down the road every weekend from events, because Salina has events happening every weekend. But that was a pretty major one right after the reopening when lots of things were available for people to do. And so we set June 5th at 12:01 a.m. as the time to go into Phase 3. And mainly, the main points from that is there will be a mass gathering limit of 50 people. All businesses, events, and activities are allowed, and then following social distance recommendations and disinfection guidelines as well. Phase out, we anticipate will be June 19th, as long as those indicators are well met. And again, it's not just do we have more cases, it's do we have more cases, are they hospitalized, have we had deaths? It's the overall picture, it's not just one set of numbers. Because we could potentially too see, maybe 2 or 3 cases, but that might be related to something that happened, they went to a family event somewhere else, and not directly related to community spread here in Saline County. So we have to take all of that information into account. This is a new resource from KDEM. They're putting this together. And so right now, this is a good visual. And it shows that we're not the only ones taking this phased approach to reopening in the state. And they will be continuing to update this map as counties either report what their plans are, or that they're not going to do something, or whatever the case may be. But you can see that there are 31 other counties right now besides us that are still taking a phased or modified ad astra plan approach to reopening. Excuse me, to reopening. So,
Jason, if I may stop you.
Yes.
The counties that are in white, does that mean they have what?
No reporting. They don't know yet for those.
No, there's no reporting of a COVID case. Is that what?
No, the counties in white mean they haven't reported what their plans are.
I see. Okay.
So essentially, they have no information at that point. This is something that they just kind of rolled out that we got to look at yesterday, and so they are going to be continuing to gather information for those counties that they don't know about at this point, and continuing to publish this and update this.
All right. Thank you.
So last thing, for all of this to be successful, everybody's got to do their part. Just like everyone in this room, as leadership bears responsibility and has a choice to do what's right or what's wrong, every individual has that responsibility and that choice. We recommend wear a mask in public when it's appropriate. Stay home when you're sick. Social distance as much as possible. Wash your hands, basic hygiene type stuff. And when we publish this order, we will have graphics and documents to help with understanding, because the order itself, it has like all of the different whereases and stuff like many other documents like that does, but then the accompanying documents will give a little bit more detail to help with better understanding. So on the RFA, so that is basically the background on number 1. So the alternatives for action is to reaffirm the decision of the local health officer to issue these orders or to recommend changes or adaptations to the proposed order. Right now, our recommendation is that you, as the Board of County Commissioners for Saline County, reaffirm the decisions made by the local health officer in conjunction with the input of all of these partners, and adopt a phased reopening approach as it's presented. And of course, there's no budget impact to the health department from this action.
Okay, are there questions or comments from commissioners?
Folks in my business are wondering and asking me in Phase 3 Is being 6 foot in between tables at restaurants part of Phase 3?
It's still recommended, yes.
Okay.
Other comments from other commissioners? I'll weigh in then, and the due diligence has been paid here, Jason. Thank you very much for everyone that served on that committee and to help give us the guidance that's going on here. And my thought personally when I took the office was to certainly try to follow the guidelines as closely as possible that are handed down through the health department, regardless of what the issue was, because obviously I'm not a health official. So at this time, I would ask if there's any public comment.
Mr. Chairman, no one on the telephone bridge has raised their hand.
Mr. Chair, if I can make a statement before we vote, is that okay? I'm going to go ahead and just read it if that's all right. When the virus hit, there was so much unknown. It was appropriate that we shut down and stay home as much as possible. We all wanted to be part of the greater effort to flatten the curve and not overwhelm the hospitals. Personally, however, I struggled with the notion that Walmart could continue their non-food operations without restrictions while small businesses had to shut down, or that Target could continue to sell clothes because they were deemed an essential business because they had a few aisles of canned goods. But well-meaning people did this because of the unknown. I get this. But now it's obvious to me that the public is ready to move on, and that a small group of people who haven't been financially impacted by this are still wanting to have a group of businesses and individuals to continue to pay the price for a relatively small degree of safety. People are still out in numbers. Counties around us have lifted restrictions. If we continue today, are we saying that this fall, when a few cases come back, that we are shutting down again? This week, a young couple had a wedding. They were married at the Art Center warehouse, but couldn't have more than 15 of their family or friends attend that special day. Luckily, a Salina radio station jumped in and they did a virtual wedding. They drove down Santa Fe. They got carry-out at Blue Sky, and then proceeded to the 67401 sign to cut the cake while family and friends stayed in the parking lot. The irony of knowing that all 100 people could have walked into Walmart to pick out and buy their wedding gifts together shows me how silly this is to keep in place. I feel we need to continue to advocate for social distancing and safe practice, but lift the restrictions immediately and let Saline County get back to business. Thank you.
All right. At this time, I would take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt the phased reopening approach as presented and recommended by our staff.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 170-20 to reaffirm the decisions of the local health officer and adopt the phased reopening approach as presented. Are there further comments? If not, all of those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We will now move. Are we going to follow this? The executive session we're going to have. We're going to go with the smoke-free, nicotine-free campus discussion.
The nicotine discussion was, put on the regular informational agenda. The only thing that you're planning on doing in a study session is the road aggregate.
All right. We will go to item number 1 then, smoke-free, nicotine-free campus discussion. And I'm not aware of it, so who's leading the discussion?
Mr. Chair, I brought this up last week, and the building authority is considering smoke-free campus. The library has already issued their smoke-free area, and I thought it'd be advantageous for the county to discuss the ramifications on potential smoking areas, And I'm well aware that the people that are smoking over at the library are going to be over on the building authority and/or adjoining county property. And I just wanted to throw it out on the table and get everybody's thoughts and ideas on a recommendation to the building authority, which is going to be acting on that, I believe, in about 3 weeks.
Mr. White, I was not at that meeting. How did the discussion go? I mean, who brought this up? And it's okay. I
honestly don't know who brought it up.
Okay.
It's been discussed on and off for several months. And
what is the policy now? You just can't do it within so many feet of the doorway? Is that it? Okay. There's no designated smoking spot. It's just away from the.
I believe there's some designated smoking areas, probably down by the bridge or the old bridge side, I should say. And of course, out in front, away from the door.
So would the library have to follow suit?
They already have their policy, which they passed, approved starting yesterday. So it's a done deal for
them.
For the library property, correct.
So the library property is not part of the Saline County, City of Salina campus? I always thought this was all one contiguous campus.
It's part of the same campus, correct, but the library's got their own area and their own jurisdiction, their own property lines, I'm saying.
And their own board.
And correct.
And their own budgets and stuff like that, right?
So this proposal then would, I'll just for clarification, you wouldn't be able to walk outside the doors or even in the parking lot of our campus and use tobacco products.
Correct.
And it seems to be the way of the future, I guess. And the three of us, just to tell the television audience, the three of us are on that board.
Yes.
And I guess we're almost looking, do you guys have any input to help us with our vote?
Well, that was going to be my comment, that the city and county building authority will be the governing board that makes that decision.
Correct.
With input either from citizens, employees, or city commission or county commission.
Correct. And so the three of us will actually make that vote not as county commissioners, but
Right,
as
as
on
a
the
building
board on
authority
that.
member.
And if you two have any problem going forward or recommendations, I guess that's probably what Commissioner White is asking for, is it's not to blindside you guys, because your input is important to us.
Can you educate me on what the driving force was for the library? Was there an issue, a problem? Was it just?
I honestly can't speak for the library. I'm sorry.
We don't know any history of why they changed. Did they have designated smoking areas prior to this?
Again, assumption. I don't know.
Okay. We have designated smoking areas. I believe they're taped off and marked.
Right.
Have we had issues brought to the building authority prior to this about the smoking? And has the building authority, is there any history here that would drive what my thoughts would be?
I think those are legitimate questions, and that's why we wanted this, and we will ask that the next time. I mean, those are legitimate and well-meaning.
Could our administrator weigh in on this issue, or you've sat through most of the building authority meetings also?
Through the chair, County Administrator Philip Smith-Haynes. Yeah, I was present at the last building authority meeting where this was discussed. Commissioner White is correct. There wasn't a lot of background shared about why the library chose to do what they did. I think to Commissioner Weiss's comment, this is kind of a trend that we're seeing, nationwide. And, Commissioner White shared that certainly there was a time where you could actually smoke in this building. And then those, rules have progressed, and so we are where we are. And the question is whether to extend that to this entire campus, which then, of course, in my mind, begs a question regarding other county facilities that are adjacent to this campus, right? So we have the health department across the street one direction, the senior center across the street the other direction, the sheriff's office and jail. So, if this is something that commissioners are in support of, where do we stop, I guess, is the one of the questions in my mind. I did have a discussion with the sheriff regarding their facility, and he's in favor of continuing to have a designated smoking area near the jail, but that's about it. This is not it's not been something that's been discussed widely among department heads yet.
I'm not certain if the city commission has discussed this at all. Personally, I find it, as a non-smoker, I find it quite offensive to enter any entrance in this building, which there are 4, I believe, without walking through a wall of smoke, entering or leaving. I would like to see maybe a balance made here, some sort of a, instead of being the entire campus, if we could move it to 100 feet, or I don't know, or at least to the parking lots as far away from the doors or something to that effect. Because, obviously we have employees who do smoke and they are allowed their break time, but to do it within 6 feet of the doors, particularly when there's a group of them at one time, is, it really proves no point to have our smoking within 6 feet of the doors right now. That's useless, to be quite honest with you. So I guess I'm in favor of moving the smoke-free area further out. I wouldn't say that I would necessarily say get it off the campus, because you just about have to get in your car and go somewhere then. And someone's on a 10-minute break, why? That's not very feasible. I'm not trying to tell them not to smoke. That's their right or their privilege or their choice. But the entrances and exits to the building are pretty offensive with the smoke.
Mr. Chair, can I say something? Thank you. Your thoughts are right on. I like that. In the information that we've got, we had the stuff from the library, and we have the information from Central Kansas Mental Health. One of the things that really bothers me about this is going too far is that one of the situations here on the Central Kansas Mental Health is that any product-related paraphernalia that can contain tobacco, nicotine, or have the appearance of tobacco-related product, e.g. pipes, cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, vape, advanced personal vaporizers, tobacco, smokeless tobacco, e-liquid, should not be visible even when not lit or being used. Can you imagine your vehicle sitting on this parking lot and you can't even have I'm not being a smoker either. It would really bother me to sit back and say that you can't have your pack of cigarettes or something sitting in your car just being visible. To me, this is kind of like a little bit overreach. And here on this campus is that if that ever got to that point, to sit there and think that the parking lot across the streets couldn't be utilized for somebody here, that an employee could not walk across the street and enjoy their tobacco if that's what they choose to do. I'm going, it's like there's a little bit of things you could implement to keep it from the doors, but I think sometimes we just go way overboard, and I feel that some of this is that point. Thank you.
And I'll expand on it a little bit. I mean, that's what the building authority is convened for, is to come up with the situation, what their recommendation is, or their vote. And you've kind of heard from us, and I think you can take that from there and come up with your own decisions, and we trust that it'll be a good one.
Well, again, we appreciate it, and there's always thoughts that group mentality is better. You come up with thoughts that I hadn't thought of, and so we'll take those to the board meeting.
And I believe it's going to be approximately 3 weeks. We'll have another building authority meeting, and I believe it's going to be an action item. And it seems like it's kind of a rush deal, seeing as how we haven't met in person through this COVID stuff, and might be able to buy a little more time and actually get some public input and some other thoughts. So,
and employee input.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move to item number 2, which is the county administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. County Administrator Philip Smith Haynes. Just a few comments today. First off, to update the Commission on the status of our emergency radio project. Last time I talked to you about this, I mentioned that we had a meeting with our consultant, and we were having a meeting just with city and county staff. That meeting did occur and resulted in some questions back to the consultant. So we got a recommendation from the consultant that actually came in last night. And Deputy Administrator Hannah Stambaugh forwarded that out to the 911 committee this morning. So we are hoping to, we're still making progress on that. We're hoping to bring something to both your commission and the Salina City Commission, hopefully by the end of this month. The second item I had on was that we have been approached by the Salina Community Economic Development Organization about whether the county would consider issuing industrial revenue bonds for a ag-related retail project located adjacent to the city of Salina, but just outside the city limits. I said I didn't know. I'd bring it to you. I know that the county has issued industrial revenue bonds one time in the past. And I know this particular project has also been presented to the city of Salina, and because it's retail and it's not within their city limits, they weren't all that interested in it. But just getting your take, if you would like Mitch Robinson to come over and do a presentation on this, or if you have thoughts now, I'd be happy to take those back. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, since we talked about legislation last week, yesterday the governor did announce that she was vetoing the House Bill 2702, which was the one that would have ended the tax lid, but then put in place that model loosely based on something out of the state of Utah. So we will see whether that gets taken up in the special session that begins tomorrow. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions or take any input on that industrial revenue bond.
You said that the county had issued an industrial revenue bonds in the past one time. How long ago was that?
It's been at least 10 years because they have been, the bonds haven't been paid off, but the underlying debt has been paid off. It was, I believe, having to do with a cabinet manufacturing business.
I guess I would certainly welcome Mitch Robinson to come and speak to us, because I don't know what it's about. I haven't, I've watched it through the times in the paper and on TV with the city commission meetings, but I would like to know more about how that would affect Saline County and our budget process and what we do. So I would certainly invite him over here quickly.
I can certainly see if he's available next Tuesday. I will say I did have a conversation with a bond attorney, and this would not impact, industrial revenue bonds are not issued on the full faith and credit of the local jurisdictions. So this would not impact our credit rating as we're, of course, looking at the potential for a bond issue on the jail, would not impact our ability to do any of that. I did check that out.
Yeah, and I think it does impact our ability to collect a tax, if I'm not mistaken. Is that? I think that's what an industrial revenue bond does.
Yeah, it would be a waiver of property tax for a period of time for this.
Yeah, and for
So it's a tax
I'll
abatement.
leave all my comments from there and just say that invite Mitch over. So go ahead, Commissioner.
So it's a tax abatement per se?
Yeah, that is what the request from the business is, and that's the bonds are just a method of financing that to be repaid back by the abatement.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to also hear from him. I mean, he's always welcome here, as far as I'm concerned. We don't have to say yes necessarily,
That's
but yeah.
for certain. Yeah, he could just ask to be put on the agenda to speak to us about that, and absolutely, I agree.
I'm interested. If it's a retail store, they're going to need water, and if they need water, they're going to have to be annexed in the city of Salina.
Again, those are questions and statements that they're
Right, and that's
bouncing
why
off my forehead and bouncing back at you.
Yeah.
So,
I believe there's areas within the county that have a rural water supply. There's other commercial businesses out in the county, not many.
Correct. I guess you're right, and I misspoke a little bit. If they're wanting City of Salina water.
Right.
Because if they abut the City of Salina, that might be their easiest point to get that water, and you would have to be annexed.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Under the.
Right.
yeah, and then, I mean, the location is going to be a factor. There's a lot of factors that come before the revenue bond itself, so, but they probably have to have that before they can make those recommendations, so.
Okay, so I'll just touch
Right.
base with Mitch and let him know that you're willing to entertain it and need more details.
Right. Thank you. All right, are there commissioner comments? Announcements? If not, the next thing on our agenda would be to go into an executive session for the purpose of attorney-client privilege for 10 minutes.
Yes, and it would be attorney-client privilege to discuss a property transaction.
Okay. Someone wish to make the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we recess the meeting and reconvene in room 107B for 10 minutes to discuss attorney-client privileges on a property transaction.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. We move into executive session for 10 minutes for attorney-client privilege, all those, and we would return to this room at 9:49.
Thank you.
All of those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're in executive session. Stay tuned in 10 minutes because we do have a road aggregate discussion that's coming up, and there potentially could be action coming out of the executive session also. So we're in executive session. session, and there will be no action coming from the executive session. So we will move forward with the study session. Item number 1, which is road aggregate, and we would call on Darren Fischel, our Road and Bridge Administrator.
Mr. Chair, I believe we're scheduled for 107B.
For that.
We are at that. I don't know why we wouldn't have that in our televised portion of it, but
I say we do have it out here.
that's what I would say. But
Okay.
I would appreciate an informal work session.
I appreciate that, but this is something the public is interested in, and it needs to be on TV.
Good enough.
you got okay. So
I'll get my documents out of 107B.
Hope that's all right.
I don't know what happened to Roger. Might also state that Justin Mater, our county engineer, is in attendance too with this. So at this point, I think Commissioner White would probably would lead the study session here to start. So I would yield the floor to you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still shuffling papers here, sorry. I just wanted to have an informal discussion similar to discussion that was conducted by Saline County and the powers that be approximately 30 years ago. And it seemed like the bridge rating, load rating changes happened or liability issues, but the county found itself with a whole bunch of obsolete bridges. And they all, a lot of 3 tons, even some old pin and hanger bridges, and which was the state of the design back in that era, and they all needed to be replaced. So many meetings with staff and the commission at that time decided, we need to come up with a 2-mile grid rating, basically a structure every 2 miles, get them upgraded. And at that time, they implemented the 2 mil special bridge fund, which is still in place today, correct? And 3.5 years ago, this board sat down and we discussed road upgrades, and we put 1 mil in a special road fund, which is still in place. And I guess my question is, in 50 years of basically the same condition of our gravel roads, and if maybe we ought to focus on maybe spending a little more money on road upgrades. I don't know the status of that. I just wanted to throw it out on the table. That's the reason for the discussion. So,
A question, Commissioner. When you talk gravel road upgrades, are you talking a higher level of maintenance schedule, or are you talking about actually changing the road structure?
I don't know what I'm advocating, to be real honest with you. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a road maintenance guy. I just know what's currently being practiced, manipulating the roads the way we do is not working. We aren't gaining. And it's been this practice for 50 years. I'm frustrated. I need some help.
I got one more question, then I'll ask this of Darren. Did not this commission in the past a couple years, maybe twice, give you authority to purchase more aggregate and more materials? Have we not continually increased the amount of materials that can be made available to you?
I'd like to respond just briefly to Mike's questions, suggestions, whatever, and I agree with him. But here's the end of the line for me. It would be that obviously we're going to need more trucks, more crews to do it in a timely fashion. I mean, it's going to be personnel and equipment driven. So, at any rate, and I'll turn it back to you, Darren.
You know, he's passing around a map, and this map was, I think, 2017 that we came up with this map and this legend. Just to let you know where we were at with the 1 mill.
So, where do we go from here?
So if we start at the top of that map, we look at Waterwell Road from Lightville to Berman, it's currently under construction. Okay, at the time, it was within the lawsuit, so it was put off to the side for a few years. And then when the lawsuit was settled, then we went out to bid for construction. That's currently under construction right now. Waterwell Road from Holmes west, 1.5 mile, that's been completed. Waterwell Road from Simpson Road west, 1.5 mile, that's been completed. Ohio Street from Waterwell south to K4, no work done there. Simpson Road from Magnolia south to K4, we have upgraded 2 miles of that to a better gravel road, which is a thickness of material, and that's where we're at on this plan. So that's what we've done with the money from the 1 mill. We currently have, I ran a report on that account yesterday, and I believe there's about $750,000 in that account. So really, as far as the upgrade, we're really waiting for some direction from the commission upon where they would like to go next and what type of upgrade, whether they would like to upgrade a road to asphalt, double prime seal, or make a better gravel road. Now, when I say better gravel road, I mean contract
grading. I mean, you're not just putting gravel on the road. I mean, it's a grading project with base construction and an accurate survey.
Would that be in line with something like happened on Simpson Road, there a mile south of Magnolia?
Yes.
Because that's a pretty extensive, and Wasserman Way would be another one that comes to mind. I don't want to put words in Commissioner White's mouth, but and Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're driving at what they've answered there or said, but you also want to know why when an area has an issue and it is identified that aggregate needs to be applied to that, why does it take the amount of time that it takes to get it done? Would that be correct?
That is correct. I guess my issue is you guys have the tools. I mean, you got state-of-the-art motor graders. Do we need more trucks? Do we need more manpower? I'm asking.
I have requested 2 more trucks and 2 more boys to help get the aggregates where we need right now. Currently, with just the aggregate requests that we have, we are probably about 10,000 tons behind with the needs that we know that are out there and with the work that we have going on with just the 4 trucks. We are behind. We have requests that we're working out gotten aggregates hauled too. And a lot of that has to do with the wet material, or the wet seasons that we've had lately. So as people, that will call and say, well, my road's muddy, can I get some rock? And we take that seriously, because that's what we're here to do, is to serve the public. But what most folks just fail to comprehend is that if you can't drive your car down it, we can't drive the truck to it without tearing up the roads anymore. So if you've got a spot here that needs a load of rock that's out in the middle of 3 miles of aggregate, you're going to tear that other 3 miles of aggregate up to get into that one spot of load of rock. So we usually have to wait a little bit till it dries up to get there to do that. But those, we do get behind. There's no doubt about that. Due to manpower and trucking. One of the reasons, and I'll throw it out there, is our maintenance practices. We have been trying to pull the ditches and reshape the roadways, and one of the things that people talk about is a windrow. And the windrow can be excessive at times, but that windrow is really there to provide the motor grader operators aggregate as they need it. It's a luxury. I will admit that a windrow is a luxury that Saline County can afford. But by the same time, when you only have 4 trucks to haul aggregates, how do you get aggregate everywhere? So that windrow is so that the motor grader operators have something to use to repair the road when they need it.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
Question. Just a question on this, and we're windrowing, and we're discussing that right now. Thank you for bringing that up, Darren. Is that here 4 years ago, I went out to visit the Road and Bridge Department, and I'll use this gravel roads construction maintenance guide. And one of your employees handed this to me and said, "This is our Bible." It's the same issue that I've been told since that day, is that, oh, yeah, this is a Bible, but we just can't do it all like this says. The windrowing, and here 2 years ago, we had a discussion, I think it was you and our prior engineer, and you proceeded to tell us what the windrow is and why we needed that, and here's the shape of our roads we need to do. We walk out of that meeting and visiting with the engineer, and he says, "I agree with you, Mr. Sparks," but he says, yeah, windrowing is illegal in some states. I mean, there's places that people do not use windrows, and right here in this Bible, and it talks about the windrowing and how it is to be effective. Sometimes traveling all over the county, it's hard for me to believe that we have an earthen road, which is dirt, and we have a 2-foot windrow or a 1.5-foot windrow of nothing but dirt over here, and we call that aggregate. And then the next time it rains, we've got a ditch inside that, which happens even on the gravel roads. I would, and just on a new road that was just being done, that you'd pulled the ditches in, this was in 2 months ago. The ditches were both pulled, all the dirt was back up on the road, and you come and the rock was spread just evenly, and I thought, wow, this is great. The rock will be right in the middle of the road to be driven on to, because the next thing we know, here comes the grader operator and puts it all over. Now we've got a windrow over here. The rock is scraped right off the road again, and it's not in the middle of the road. We have a big windrow over here, and it's already back down to the basic bottom of the road. So the next rain you get, it's already back down to the mud. There's nothing there. I want to ask a question here on Lightville, just to the south of Waterwell. I know that you've just spent a lot of grading there to get that up and going, and then you put rock on it. The first time I saw that, and then I'm thinking, okay, was that compacted with any device at all before the rock was put on? Because the first road I seen, somebody went down it, the ruts were 6 to 8 inches deep in the rock.
You know, that particular project, if you want to talk about instances.
Yep.
Okay, we were needing to get something on that road so people had a way around, and I'm going to tell you no. But
okay.
That road had been worked prior to that happening, and while we were attempting to get that project done, it rained. Okay, we had the aggregate down, and then the last 100 yards, it rained. And so when we went back to try to finish it on the following Monday, it was a little bit wetter than what we would normally apply.
I will say on that, and I drive that road quite a bit, it has compacted a bunch now. In a short period of time, it is a very passable road.
But we did compact the aggregate that we put on it.
Mhm.
We did have a roller there, a rubber tire roller to compact that.
Okay. But one of the things that, and I just want to bring up and ask the question is that this is how we're pretty much doing all the roads. You know, like you said, I can't imagine that we go in and we pull the ditches. We've got kind of a, I don't want to say pull the ditches. That's we're grading back the shoulders, and you put that on the road, and then you put rock on it, and the first thing we do is grade off, and it's back down to the deal. I would like to see, and I get a lot of areas that are in some of our areas that we produced since February 2016. We have a road standards and maintenance procedures guideline for rural operators. Is this still in place? Does our rural operators still try and follow these guidelines?
You know, that has been probably modified since then, but yes, it is most generally, yes.
Okay. Does our graders have any of the bit bar methods? Do we use that at all?
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
I can't tell you exactly every instance where, but I have seen them use them, yes.
okay. Okay.
I have an engineering question. Justin, your predecessor gave us a report, and it's on page 6. I believe you have a copy of that, first paragraph. And at that time, Neil commented he's had a measure of frustration with the windrow. What's your thoughts and ideas? Neil's been gone several years now, so.
My thoughts on Enro, there's definitely some pros and cons to it. I mean, I understand where Darren's coming from when you have that windrow, because we only have 4 trucks, which is not a lot of trucks to service a tremendous amount of roads. So when you have that rain and you need the rock out there, we don't have the ability to cover the miles of road that we do. And so if you have the material over there sitting on the side of the road, waiting to be used when it's needed, that's very helpful, okay? Because if it is in the road, then it is being driven on, and, you know, I mean, for instance, let's say we eliminate all windrows and we put the rock on the road, well, then that material is being worn down and literally blown away, you know, as that rock is crushed from traffic and is blown away, and that happens for several weeks, and then all of a sudden it rains, and that material is worn down and not there, then we can't get rock there right away. So I do see the advantage of having that windrow there. Now there is, I have not driven nearly all of the gravel roads in the county. Because mainly my job is dealing with blacktop roads. I have not seen an excessively large windrow, because that can cause issues with, just being an obstacle on the road. And so I've been comfortable with the size of the windrows that I've noticed on the sides of the road. Now there is other issues with drainage. It does provide secondary ditches. In the low spots, it can hold water. But again, from what I've noticed, the windrows haven't been that big. And it's usually a rock material, so it's very porous, so the water can filter through that rock. But it is still an area where, it could, it narrows up your road. It can be an issue with traffic at times, but your comment, Roger, we're putting it in the road, that means that rock is being worn down. It would be ideal if you put that rock on the road where it belongs and it would stay there, but it doesn't stay there. It does get in some places in clay soils, it just gets driven in deep into the ground. So I can see really both sides of it. I'm by far no gravel road expert. You know, I think if with more trucks and manpower to run those trucks to where we can get the aggregate to the roads in a lot more timely manner, I would think that the need for windrow would be less and less.
Well, if I could break down some of the numbers real quickly. 1,080 miles, 1,078 miles that we've got of road. Not all of it are earthen roads. I think that's about 750 miles. But with 10,000 tons of aggregate to be hauled, that is approaching 700 truckloads of dirt, or of gravel to be hauled. We've got 4 trucks to do it with. They can usually average, I think, Darren, what, 5 to 6 loads a day, something like that, based on where the aggregate is. It's 275 miles per truck. I will back up his request on a budget to get a couple more trucks, a couple more drivers, and with the understanding that the residents who want their roads improved, it's going to come at a cost. And that cost is going to be in your tax slightly going up with, you can't buy a $100,000 dump truck and put a $50,000 driver on it for nothing. So it's as simple as that. And I advocate that we do put another crew on there. We do put on 2 more trucks, and we do buy 2 new trucks. And Darren stated we got 4 trucks. 2 of them are broke down about half the time. I mean, they're 20 years old with hundreds of thousands of miles on them. Previous commissions have, been baling wire and duct tape, and we're paying the price now.
Well, we have, at times, some excessive windrow, and that's because of the maintenance practice from pulling shoulders. I don't know, the earth road, but when you pull a shoulder, the purpose of pulling a shoulder is twofold. It's one's to retrieve the aggregate that has washed down into the ditch over time, and to reestablish the fore slope so the water can have better drainage to the ditch. The ideal time to pull a shoulder is in the spring when there isn't any vegetation to interfere with the working of the grader. And so in a perfect world, to pull a shoulder, you would have a water truck and a roller and other people there to work that road and compact that material back into the roadway. So I do understand what you're saying there, and it may have the appearance that we have an excessive windrow, but that's only for a short time. Because we don't have the forces to do that at the time, the motor grader operator in his regular cycle will go back and work that across the road. But we try to double work it when we can to try and knock most of the trash out, let it dry up, blow away. But it doesn't always happen. Each motor grader operator has about 100 miles of roadway, typically. And so when you think of the miles a motor grader can just blade a day, which is 12 to 14 miles, it takes about 2 weeks for a motor grader operator to get over all of his road.
That's unless he doesn't have a project he has to work on.
Unless he doesn't have a project, unless it doesn't rain, and then if he has a high travel road, he has to work it twice a week. So that's where managing their territory comes into play. If they have a road that only has 10, 20 cars, where they know that they don't necessarily have to play that every 2 weeks. But also, by the same time, they're expected to adjust their time accordingly.
Darren, if I might make a suggestion, and that's all it is, suggestion, that when a road is identified or is needing gravel, and I'll use the example of, I think it's a Muir Road out where you and I and Mike were looking at a road one day, and that had been ordered for aggregate to be put on that road. But can we prioritize, rather than just getting in line to get aggregate, because one road might need a load of aggregate, but it's not necessary to get there. That road that they had out there needed aggregate as in pronto, and it didn't get it. Is there a way that we can prioritize rather than just put them in line? I don't know if that's feasible. I mean, everybody wants their aggregate right now. I know that part, but that's...
I've been talking with IT this week, and we have within our cartograph program, and it just got done today, is we have a check mark box that says citizen request. Now, citizen requests are a high priority for our department, but as you get so far behind, that part of that gets lost. I mean, that's just the way it is. We do that, we forget things. And so those citizens' requests are going to be in a report that gets weighted higher.
I get that.
We do, every task, there's important, low importance, and I have identified what they are.
But a citizen in Territory 2 might not be, as apt to say, man, I need some aggregate over here, even though he's got a situation like the head on Muir Road versus someone who lives in another part of the county, citizens request, and he can wait a month before he gets that aggregate to make it, that'd be a negative to that for me. But that's your department, and I want you to run it.
My point on the citizen request is you just don't want to take care of the squeaky wheel. I mean, I would like to look to you guys to decide what are the priorities, and yes, we'll take a look, and I've asked you to take a look from the squeaky wheel before, so I appreciate you doing that. So, but at the same time, if there's a huge project like Wasserman that needed to be done, and you think it needs to be done, that's a priority to me than just somebody.
Within that system, let me also explain, prior to putting aggregate out, we don't ever just take a phone call and say, okay, I need some rock on my road. We don't write up a task and send it out. Somebody physically goes and looks at the site to see if it really is a requirement.
Gotcha.
A couple questions here. When your territory grader guy, he identifies a need, and he sends that in. And 2 months later, you have a citizen who is identifying the same area. And is it just done in order of how that comes in? Is there, and how far behind are you on your aggregate movement?
4 months.
4 months
10,000
behind.
tons.
Okay. And actually, we're talking.
Not all that, because we do have priorities built within the system to say important, high priority, medium, and low. And we do have those identified. I don't have that in front of me, but I have identified those. A high priority or an important priority is something that is a safety to the travelway. I need it right now.
I think we have two different things we're talking about. One is road maintenance and the other being road improvement. If I can touch back on your map and your road improvement, you have a list there. Was that a priority list? And second question, if it is that a dynamic list?
Everything should be a dynamic list because traffic patterns change. This was not a priority list. This was just a list of, okay, these roads were on everybody's list that we should improve.
Okay, and the question, and the floods kind of brought this to mind. I think it was down around the Gypsum area, the road that bends. Maybe you can help me, Chairman.
Kingman?
Kingman Road. Is that on this list?
It is not.
And that's one that Justin has identified, and I think some funding is trying to be found.
Well, I found it. We don't have it yet, but I'm actively currently working on that.
Okay, and so do you bring the engineer in when this list is put together? Is that a cooperative thing between Road and Bridge and engineering?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this was the list that Neil and I came up with, and this was a place to give the commissioners, say, okay, this is where it was at. And also, I think a factor that should be not only ADP driven would be dollars that we spend maintenance-wise. Because once you reach that $15,000 a year threshold, which is what it takes to maintain an asphalt roadway, if you're spending more than $15,000 putting rock on a road, then your dollars ahead to go ahead and pay it.
And I believe that Kingman Road was destroyed 2 or 3 times during the floods.
Yes.
There
That's
was
mitigation, an issue. That's also a mitigation.
But it was one we knew about. We had known about that for quite a while.
Yes.
And I hadn't seen it until I went out there during the flooding and watched how much effort and work had to be put into that. and yet it wasn't on our road improvement list. I was rather surprised.
I was too.
But I'll finish up real quick here.
Sure.
Just a couple things. I believe as a commission, and the Road and Bridge 2 mil fund was long before my time. But the road improvement was on my clock. I think there's been a lot of requests for additional aggregates, and equipment has rarely been denied to the Road and Bridge during the course of my 3.5 years. So I think we have felt your pain and done what has been asked of us. And I too want to get away from the squeaky wheel. I would like to see some way where we could be more
data-driven.
Yeah, data-driven, and putting IT into the picture and doing that. And maybe it is going to take people, maybe it is going to take more dump trucks, but I hope that you're turning every rock over to find answers to these problems.
You know, I've always said, and I may be speaking out of turn, but I think it goes back to the primary route. I think that needs to be revisited. And if this is the road that we're telling Saline County citizens that's going to be a good road, that we ought to revisit it, make sure it's current, and then prioritize off of that.
Currently, we have 3 levels of designation for a road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the major one is the gravel road. That is the most, I mean, you know, as far as maintenance goes, the difference between an earthen road and a gravel road is significant. And in this case, I think I think everybody's driving at this, is the difference between a road that's well-traveled, gravel road, versus a gravel road that's not very well-traveled. The level that of maintenance is significantly different, even though they're supposed to be classified as the same road. It's I don't know if we need to come up with another designation or another classification, but it's an issue,
You know,
I guess you'd say.
Just dollar-wise, if you look at it's 175 miles of asphalt, 700 some miles of gravel. I would caution against saying, okay, we need to pave more, because that's more expensive to maintain. If you look at our budget and what we spend approximately the same amount of dollars maintaining 700 some miles of gravel road as we do 175 miles of paved road. So that's the difference between the expenses. If you're going to pave more roads, then it's going to cost more to maintain those roads. And I'm going to look at Simpson Road. We upgraded Simpson Road a couple years ago. When I say upgrade, we looked at the drainage structures and we put a sufficient thickness of aggregate to carry the traffic. And we haven't put a load of rock on it since. Now, it's going to need some here pretty soon, because I've noticed a couple areas of it getting thin. So I think if you focus some forces on whether it be contract, we're pretty much stretched thin in our department. So I think if you want to upgrade, when I say or improve, let's say improve a gravel road, it should be looked at from the standpoint of engineering and putting that geogrid underneath it, a confirmed layer of thickness and the proper compaction. And I think you'd find that those roads would hold up quite a bit better than a sand road. And so as you talk about different levels of gravel roads, there absolutely is a different level of serviceability in different gravel roads.
I remember a couple years ago asking you, are we giving you what you want? I mean, are we giving you enough? And from what I'm hearing now and what I'm hearing from Commissioner White, that things aren't working. I mean, if we went to improving roads better, like you just explained a few moments ago, do you feel comfortable coming back and I would want you to feel comfortable coming back to the commission asking for more money? I mean, it is the #1 calls that we get are roads, and we do have to, weigh whether it's the squeaky wheel or it's a legitimate concern. But I mean, I would want you to feel comfortable coming back to us that and asking for, the level of what you want. And Commissioner White, if I could make a point, because I've always leaned on you to educate me on some roads, and so when you say things aren't working, I take that seriously. I believe you. Do you think it's a matter of technique, lack of money, lack of equipment, all the above? I would appreciate knowing where you're coming from. And
I wish I had that answer, which I do not. I greatly appreciate this conversation, though. It seems like our practices, like I say, for the last 50 years have all been the same, and it's the same results.
One of the things that affects a gravel road more than anything is sufficient aggregate to carry the load.
Okay.
And mostly when you talk about the types of traffic that our gravel roads are expected to handle these days, which is a school bus, a trash truck, and now UPS, Amazon, those types of things. Those agricultural equipment, much bigger and heavier. But the agricultural equipment, and I'm not going to say that is a big one, but they have semis now instead of single axle trucks to haul their wheat. But the school buses and the trash trucks, those commercial things, they travel the roads whether it's raining or not. Most of the ag people, when they can't get into their fields, they're not going around other than with their wheat trucks. But the school buses, they're going to go every day. The UPS truck, it's going to go every day. The trash truck's going to come to your house every week like it's scheduled to. And those are very heavy loads, whether it's raining or snowing or whatever the road's right. And that's what does most of the damage to our gravel roads.
So there was Norm Bowers wrote an article, and he got the data from Texas DOT, but in a gist, what the report stated was that a tractor trailer semi combo causes about 18,000 times more damage than a 4,000-pound passenger vehicle. 18,000 passenger vehicles equals one semi.
One thing that we're kind of leaving aside here, and I'm not going to pick on our administrator, but I mean, if we ever get back to a sense of normalcy, get past the COVID and all that, I really would. I've stressed it through two different administrators now to have the administrator be a little more heavily involved with the guidance at Road and Bridge. And hopefully that when we get back to some sense of normalcy that Phil, and I think that probably goes with every department. I'm not picking on Phil at all, but that's rather than have to have commissioners, raise the issues and continue to do it. I'd sure like to see the administration get involved in this.
Commissioner Shadwick kind of tweaked my thoughts here when he was talking about resources. And if you need more resources, you need more drivers, you need more trucks. Is that because you're behind, or is that if you were caught up, would you need that same number to maintain? Is it something that we could contract out for a short period of time and not make the purchases or put personnel on the payroll just to solve a problem to get you caught back up?
Well, it's two-part question. What I heard, does the road and bridge have enough resources and to get caught back up? The answer is no. Okay, it is a never-ending process. We will never be caught up because there's always such things as Mother Nature's. There's always something to do. There's always a ditch that needs cleaned up. There's always a road that needs aggregate. And I relate it to your house. You don't get painted just once. And so there is always something to do. Now, do we need a few more resources to maintain what we have now? Absolutely.
Is that because you're behind, or is that, if it's a perfect world and you were caught up on everything, do you have the resources on hand now to maintain it?
I would say we're close, but I would say more money isn't going to help us do any more than what we can because of the staffing that we have. I would say you could throw as much money as you wanted to, and it wouldn't get better. So in hiring a contractor to use some of that $1 million fund to upgrade the road only makes sense, because we're taxed. We can't do any more than what we provide right now. If that answers your question.
No, it doesn't.
Well, when you say more money, I think you're just thinking dollars. I think more money for more staff for more equipment.
Right.
Is okay.
That's what I said, resources.
Yes, and so if you say, okay, here's another $100,000 for aggregate, well, that would not help.
Well, that's, when I say resources, I mean
Okay.
personnel, I mean trucks, I mean whatever it is.
We have, just a little history, prior to 2008, we had another 2 truck drivers. So this is just, we had another 2 truck drivers and what they call a mini crew. So this is just an attempt to get some of that staffing back to hopefully make some.
Another fact that I heard the other day, I think, and maybe Phil can answer this too, but I heard that there were like 500 new residential construction over the last however many years, not too many years, that are out now in the county than what they were out there. So that's a lot more traffic that's out there too.
But it's a good question, and it's really a multiple prong answer. And so if you talk about road upgrades, that to me, that's contract work. Those dollars are in place, and that's for us to give the commission the information to them, for them to make a decision on which road they want to do. That's really my position, is to give the commissioners the information that way. Now, if you come out and say, set the parameters about how you want to look at those roads, you want to look at traffic count, you want to look at proximity to the city of Salina, you want to look at, is it a primary rural route? Those are things that can be answered, and we're willing to answer. We just need to have the right question that way for the upgrades, and what kind of servicing are you looking at? We have made efforts in the last couple of years to change our maintenance practices. Are we there yet? No. It is an ongoing process to get better, but we're always trying to improve.
And I appreciate that, Darren. And again, thank you for the conversation. We need to do it again and challenge everybody in this room to try to fix an issue for improvement for everybody.
And I appreciate you being willing to do this out here. And the reason why I said that is I want the public to know that we do talk about this. I mean, I think when they watch our things and we just pass, resolutions or whatnot, they don't see that we're having these conversations. And I mean, I'm willing to have these conversations. When we work on an asphalt road, we can hire shears or APAC or, whomever. We contract it out with another person. Are there companies out there that work on gravel road? Okay. So if there was a one-off that the commission just decided with your approval that it's a priority and we didn't have the staff to do it, I mean, there are people out there that will take on a mile road or a half a mile road. And
yeah, I mean, even the asphalt contractor we have here in town, they do dirt work, and depending on the size, there's always subcontractors, and so, with every project that you bid out, there's a prime contractor and subcontractors. So an asphalt company's gonna hire a subcontractor to do grading, or they might do it themselves. I did put some very rough numbers together, just to kind of get an idea of what it costs to do certain things. And so none of this involves drainage structures, because that varies so much. Because if we're gonna improve a road, it's my opinion that we improve the road, okay? So that we look at the drainage structures, if they are, starting to deteriorate, you're replacing drainage structures. You buy right-of-way. If we're improving a road, we don't fit that in a 40-foot wide right-of-way. because then you get, narrow roads. We're gonna make an improvement, but then all of a sudden it's still narrow, it's still a steep four slope, or some people call it a shoulder slope. It still has a lot of those aspects of an unapproved road. So I'm talking about buying right-of-way where needed.
Right.
It's a full grading project. It's not a surfacing project, it's a grading project with surfacing. So it has a full model, and that might involve moving utilities in a lot of cases. And it's a lot of work to buy right away and move utilities, but if we're gonna improve road, that's my suggestion. But this just looks at the base cost of the construction project, and to do 1 mile of grading, and this is pretty minimal grading, with a geograde reinforcement and 6 inches of a base material with the surfacing, you're looking at about $325,000 a mile for that. And just to give it some comparison, the project on Waterwell Road over there, if you break that down to that same 1 mile, however, this has 4.5 inches of asphalt on top of it. You're looking at 630,000 miles. Okay, and so and that's where it gets into traffic count, but not just traffic count. It's that truck, your estimated percentage of truck traffic of that ADT, because that's where you get all your damage at. So that just gives you some ideas on some costs on that. So I would say right now you probably 325,000 plus. I would say that would be the low end of what it would cost to hire a contractor to do it right.
All right. I think everybody has a sense of an idea of what you're going to get done here and what we're expecting, I think, and a feeling from everybody, and keep the rain away. I was thinking a while ago, a 2-inch rain probably impacts your department for, depending on how much you've had before that, obviously, but it's a month or so it'll impact you.
We had
So.
I would like to ask from the commission, I appreciate the discussion today, I really do. I would also like some direction. Would you like to look at another study session and say, okay, let's look at the rural primary routes, what do we need to do, is this something that we're interested in? And that way we can work towards something.
I think that's a good idea. I would support that totally. I'd like to do that out at Road and Bridge too. You've got the meeting room out there to do it with. We can look at some of the equipment, what you do or don't have type things. I think if we can get that put on our agenda real soon.
I would like to keep the discussion going.
I find these more helpful than a Road and Bridge update, because that you can email to me.
We'd be more welcome to have everybody out every month.
Right. So I mean, I would like you as much as anything is when we schedule a Road and Bridge update, I would like this conversation to happen. You can email me what you've done and everything, and that's all nice, but I think that these are helpful, and I'd like to continue to do them.
Why don't we let you work with Phil on that, and whatever he says guidance-wise, put a meeting together for us, and we'll continue to go down that path if we can. So.
And I want to commend that there's a lot of the roads that have really gotten to be improved in the last 6 months to a year. I mean, there's a lot of areas of the county that have really started getting better, and I think your crews are doing a heck of a job. Then there's other areas that are still bunch of help, but it's like, but anyway, to me, it's still one of those areas about, it's like drainage. We got to have a little crown on the road to get the water to go through the ditch. Got to get the water off the road, and there's a lot of areas that are still the way we're maintaining them, or they're flat, they got ruts, and it's not getting any better. And when we put gravel on it and grade it flat again, and you got the same ruts right there that you've got, it gets me is how we can put rock on a road and grade it, put a windrow over here, and you've got ruts there. I mean, you just put this rock in that you'd think it'd fill those ruts in, but it's just amazing how that happens. But I got to commend your group efforts of what is happening, because some areas are getting better.
And our crews did an excellent job on the shouldering, so, and you still have more to go.
We do have a long ways to go. That's one of the main focuses for our department in improving the safety of our transportation system is getting an edge list on those. And I know engineering's looking into putting some projects together with the dollars commission has given us for the upgrade safety improvement line on it.
And it's difficult hauling all that aggregate out for shouldering and still putting it down on the rural county roads, so.
Okay, I think we've pretty well been around the Christmas tree here on this. And so we appreciate you fellows coming in and sharing the information with us. Appreciate the commissioners that bring up the thoughts and ideas that we've had with this. And unless someone else has something for the betterment of the situation, why, I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you for watching.